Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be doing another thrift flip video, but I promise this whole channel isn't going to be just thrift flips. If you haven't seen my face or don't know who I am an eco-conscious designer. I focus on thrift flipping and upcycling. Every piece I make is one of one, my own original design. These videos are for people to get inspiration or learn from my mistakes. So if you do get inspiration and you create this piece, a different variation of it, or make it your own, please tag me because I would love to see what you guys do. This will be the first time that I am attempting this exact piece. It's going to be trial and error. Today I am transforming a regular short sleeve button down into a tube top and matching throwovers. The throwover is kind of optional. It's not exactly perfect, but if you're just making it for yourself, I'll probably include it just to show you what else you can do with the excess fabric. To create the top, we are going to use a method that I like to call cloning or copying a pattern. We're basically going to take this top that I already have and create a pattern from it. This is a technique that's actually used a lot in the design world. A lot of designers will just take a piece that they have and essentially copy it, but then make their own renovations to the pattern, make it unique to them. The materials I use include this grommet thing. This is a really huge bulky grommet maker, but there are some that are handheld that you can just punch the grommets in. This is just the one that I have and I really like it. It's pretty simple and straightforward to use once you figure out how to use it. If you don't have a grommet, I actually used to use buttonholes instead of grommets. It will just make the piece look a little bit different. It might not be as sturdy as a grommet would, but definitely play around with that and see what you think about using a buttonhole for that, or buttons, zippers, anything like that. The next thing I use is a serger, but I always say if you don't have a serger, a zigzag stitch is the second best thing. A regular sewing machine, and then a top that you want to use to create the pattern. The top that I had on hand was actually perfect for this design. It was really easy to manipulate and make it into the design that I wanted. But if you don't have this exact same top, then maybe you could use a tube top that you have or something that's similar shape, and then fix it and make it the right size and the right shape that you want. I used a silk white ribbon to tie in the back. I created another string for the front. So I will show you how to make your own ribbon string tie thingy. And then for the back, if you want to do the same thing, but I actually just used a store-bought white silk ribbon for the back. So if you want to see exactly how I turned this into this, then keep on watching. The first thing I always do is sketch out a basic silhouette. It's really important to come up with a basic outline of what you want, even though it might not end up looking exactly like that. This is the shirt I started out with. It is just a simple non-stretch woven short sleeve button down. If I were to do this again, I would probably have picked a little bit of a thicker fabric just to give it a little more structure, but this ended up working out fine in the end. This is the tube top I used for cloning. I like the shape. I like the fact that there are different parts of it. It has a little bit of a stretch to it, or my fabric doesn't have any stretch in it, but it still worked out. So I laid it down flat on some tracing paper and I put a bunch of weights there to keep it down. One thing that I will say I wish I did differently was I probably should have just went ahead and traced this directly onto my pattern paper, but this works too. As you can see, I am using just whatever that I find in my workroom. I have some safety pins right there and just some random stuff to hold the fabric down while I trace. I also have it open, but if you're using a tube top that you have, you obviously can't open that, so you can just lay it super flat. The key is just to make it as flat as possible. As you can see here with my finger, I'm trying to make it even more flat as I trace around. When cloning, you only have to trace out half of the front or half of the back, because essentially what you'll do is mirror the other side, unless you're going for an asymmetrical look. But in this case, I'm just going to trace half of the front and then mirror it, and you'll see exactly how I do that in a second. I'm also marking where all the seams are so that I can draw them later. So this is the final front half of the left side, and I marked where the seams were on my tube top, but if you're not using the exact same type of corset style tube top, you can just find out where you want these lines to be. This is just going to break it down and make it look a little bit more structured. As you can see, I didn't cut both seam lines, so I left one bigger piece, and that is because there is already a straight seam in my shirt that matches with that line. But if this is all too confusing for you and you don't know where your seam lines are on your shirt and stuff like that, then go ahead and cut all 3. This is just for me to save some fabric. So now I'm taping it down to my more heavy duty pattern paper. This is just construction paper, a little bit thicker than regular paper, and I am adding 1/4 inch of seam allowance along all sides. Now I'm going to take this pattern maker tool to just true up the edges, which is basically just smoothing it out. I always write exactly what it is, what size it is, what part it is. I put left side corset, the size, and how much seam allowance it is. Here I am just cutting it out and folding the paper the other way because it kept rolling up. Since my fabric was so thin, this is the lining that I'm going to use under it. It's this super soft thrifted bedsheet material. If you use a thicker fabric, I don't think you're going to need lining. Like if you use denim or something, I think that would be really dope to use for this piece. Now I am just prepping and ironing. I always say you need to iron it. Any type of fabric you're working with before you cut it. I am just now tracing it again and cutting it out. Doing the same method with the weights to hold it down, truing it up, and then cutting it. As you can see, I have the fabric folded because it is cut too, so once I cut these out, it's going to basically mirror and be 4 whole pieces. Okay, so I just wanted to jump in real quick here and note that I wish I had cut out all 3 pieces for the lining. It didn't really make much of a difference for this specific piece because I ended up kind of fixing it later, but you'll see. Let's get back to the video. And I'm also just pinning it right now. Pinning is really important especially for fabrics that move around a lot. Also, I used a water-soluble pen. Taylor's chalk will work too. There's a bunch of different variations of this. It just comes out with water. I ended up switching from my heavy duty scissors to my lighter, more dull scissors because this type of fabric is super fragile and delicate, and when I use those big metal scissors, it actually cut through my fabric, so I do suggest using some scissors that are a little bit lighter. Now I am taking out the pins, and this is what it looks like after you cut it. Here I am unbuttoning the shirt and laying it flat. This is where I am lining up that seam I was talking about in the beginning, the seam that I didn't put in the lining, and I am just chalking and cutting it out. So I repeated the same thing on the other side by flipping the pattern the opposite way, and now I just have 4 sides that are mirrored, the seams in the middle of the bigger sides. So here I am marking where the seam line is on that bigger piece. If you had cut 3, you wouldn't have to do this part, but I'm just marking the seams because I decided to actually add the seam to the lining, and so here I am drawing where the seam is and cutting it out so that I can stitch it all back together. Now this will make my seams slightly shorter, like really like 1/4 inch smaller, but it was okay for this piece. It still worked out. I just wish I had already accounted for that 1/2 piece in the beginning by cutting 3 pieces of the lining like I said before. So this is just the finished product. I have sewn it all together with an overlock stitch. So now I have added a top stitch over the interlock stitch by flattening it out and pressing the seams and then sewing 1/4 of an inch from the original seam line, just so that it's a lot more flat and just looks a little bit more presentable. This also adds a little bit more durability and structure. Just a little tip I wanted to add here, always keep your seam length at 2.5 inches. This is a standard seam length that people use. Now I'm just lining up the 2 fabrics back to back to prepare to sew them together. My plan is just to go on with my serger and create an overlock stitch. If you don't have a serger, you can just use a regular stitch and then just double fold it, but make sure you account for this in the beginning. You can also use bias tape here. There are many different methods you could try if you don't have an interlock or serger machine. Now I'm just serging the 2 fabrics together. Since there was 1/4 inch of seam allowance missing from the lining, the blade on my serger is just cutting off that extra 1/4 inch on my outside fabric. Now I'm just hemming it by folding the seam over and then about 1/4 inch and then adding a simple straight stitch all the way around. This is just going to be my hem and clean up the edges. So now on the bottom back of the excess fabric, I am cutting 2-inch strips. These strips are going to create ribbons to tie up the front. This is also used to create straps. So now that I have cut it out and sewed each piece together, I'm going to fold it like so. Basically, the point is to tuck away the raw hem, and then I'm going to pin it. This pin part is really important because the fabric moves a lot when it's folded like this, especially since there's nothing really holding it together. So if you pin through it, it's going to make it go by a lot faster and a lot smoother. I guess I didn't record this part, but the next thing I did was obviously just sew it down to create the strap. To prep my fabric for my grommet machine, I just cut X's, and my grommets are about 1/4 inch in width, I believe. I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, I just had to cut the crosses, and then this is me just pushing the grommets through and then sealing it with my grommet machine. You can probably see more in-depth videos of people doing this if you look it up on YouTube or something. Now that I've completed the grommets for the front, I am now adding it to the back part. I marked with chalk where I wanted the X's to be. I think I put them about 1.5 inches apart for the back. So this is the front and back with all of the grommets. Honestly, grommets are my favorite thing to use right now. I just think they're super easy and a really cool, edgy thing to add to any piece. So here's the final back with the silk ribbon laced through. I think it looks awesome with the silk. So I debated even adding this part to the video, but I just wanted to show you what I pulled out of my butt this late at night. I don't even know what time it is. It's super late at night. And I just wanted to do something with the extra fabric just to, I don't even know. I just wanted to fool around, but I don't even know how to explain exactly what I'm doing here. This is 100% improv, 100% abstract, if you will. So I'll just speed through this and you can just see for yourself and, I don't know, decipher what in the world I'm doing here. Do you ever just put yourself in a scenario like that is really not at all happening, but in your mind, in your delusional mind, that is really what's happening? I think I put myself in a scenario where I am on Project Runway. There's 10 minutes left on the clock. My piece needs something and I do have extra fabric, so I'm just kind of throwing some BS together. This is exactly what I'm doing, but honestly, I don't hate how it turned out. Alright, so now I'm just hemming and adding my finishing touches to this throw over thing. This is the final look. Like I said, the throw over isn't perfect, but the actual top itself is for sale on my website, so definitely go check it out if you're interested. Alright, that's it. Thank you so much. Let me know what you guys thought about the look. I'm really happy with it. Like I said, if you want to see more of this, if you want to see more of me, give me a like and a subscribe, and that's all the motivation I need to just keep on going. It really means the world that you are here and watching and supporting eco-conscious and sustainable fashion, and I will see you guys in the next video.